welcome to the Lawrence Community Shelter Board of Directors special meeting. It's December 7th at 9:06 a.m. Call the meeting to order. For those that are present, we have Christina, Chuck, and myself, and I was hoping we would have another board member that joined us remotely. I don't see that. So at this point, we don't have quorum. Let me see if I can get Elizabeth to fill. Yes, okay. He apparently doesn't have the Zoom link. This is. Okay, looks like we have Elizabeth now, so 4 of us are here. We do have quorum. I'd like to go ahead and move on to the next topic on the agenda. It's approval of the agenda. I sent out a draft yesterday, and the only change I made was just I wanted to provide space for update on the ED search. And then otherwise, I didn't have anything else to change. Does anyone else have any changes they'd like to make to the agenda before we vote to approve it?
I might add, Charlie, do you think we need approval on the timeline that I set forth on the advisory board recruitment process?
I think we can squeeze it in there.
Okay.
Advisory committee timeline approval. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be really quick. I just wanted, before I put it out there, I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page. So.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll add that. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, then I'll like a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve. Oh, sorry.
All right, Christina's motion and Elizabeth the second of the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. So the report on the ED search progress, we've got the 10 round 1 candidates have been scheduled. 1 has withdrawn, so we have 9 that are scheduled. The one that withdrew didn't really give much of a reason, just said that they're considering some other things. So the exec committee is going to has decided we're going to go ahead and notify the applicants that had not advanced that they're thank them for their interest and that tell them an update on the process. So what that means is that the applicant pool is not something we're going to reach back into. So we're advancing forward with the group we have. So at this point, it's 9. We'll still intend to advance 4 to the second round. And then however that goes, then it'll go down to 2 in the final round. Okay. Elizabeth, do you want to give an update on round 2?
Yeah, so when looking at the logistics and the timeline of all of this, it became clear, considering the broad group of people that we want to recruit for being a part of round 2, that it looks like we might need to adjust our timeline and expectation. Essentially, for the panel, the number of folks that were interested in having it, we're looking at dates on Wednesday, December 13th, Monday, December 18th, Tuesday, December 19th, and Wednesday, December 20th, to attempt to be able to do those interviews. So essentially how we're doing this is we're collecting individuals who we think would be a good fit for being able to participate in this and bringing that perspective that we're looking to based off of those 5 categories that we talked about in the last meeting. And I'm going to send out a doodle poll to all of them to figure out what's the best time that those folks can participate. And then once we nail down that time, then we're going to reach out to the 4 candidates, and we're going to let them know that that is the time. We're more than likely looking at an evening or an afternoon on that one. So it might be either it'll more likely be later on that 3rd week in December. So that adjusts the timeline that we were hoping for originally. But Charlie, I don't know if you want to speak more towards that process.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize what you said, because there's some sound in the background, and I think our speaker volume is a little low. Just for everybody else in the room, first want to acknowledge that Rebecca has arrived, so now there are 5 of us present. But what I think I heard you say, and just if I didn't get this right, please correct me. The timing of scheduling the 2nd round interviews is it's more difficult than we expected, and so now we're imagining that or anticipating that those interviews will be completed the week of the 18th, 19th, 20th. Is that correct?
Yeah, that seems to more like I said, sorry you couldn't hear. But we're gonna do a doodle poll to see the best day. And if magically Wednesday the 13th or it works, then that would be great. But I would like to be able to open it up so that folks can choose later on in the week as well.
Okay.
I know that won't make it possible for us to have the slate, the final 2 people. I think it'll be very challenging to pull that off by the last December board meeting. But
Okay.
do we want to readjust our expectations right now, or do we want to still try to proceed and stick with the plan?
I would say for now, it sounds like, it's a helpful update, and I think when we have our meeting next week, we'll know for sure, because you'll by then be able to tell us.
Yeah.
So it sounds like she's still trying to get it done next week, like really just a day after we finish round 1. But if that doesn't work, she's already anticipating the possibility of scheduling it the following week, which is what might create a problem with trying to also do the final interviews on that Thursday. So I think we stay tuned and get an update at our next meeting on Thursday of next week.
Great.
That sound good?
Yep. And I can email updates kind of as they come along. But
all right, I appreciate that. If you just send an email update, I think the board probably all like to hear that, in case they didn't catch it all, because we have a fan blowing in the background here.
And Charlie, I know that Elizabeth has been tasked with or volunteered to take leadership in this space, but I would also like to throw somebody into the space of meeting an opportunity to include on if there's more community members or representation of diverse perspectives that we could add into how the interviewers look like. I don't know if she's already has her cast already, but I would like to include someone.
She's in that process, and what we agreed to at the last board meeting was she sent out basically a request that we each send her directly, so it doesn't constitute a COMA violation. So we just send her directly any advice or input we want to provide. And there are 5 stakeholder groups that are the target: employees of the shelter, guests of the shelter, community partners / funders, donors / volunteers, and then board members. And the board members would be you and her. So the idea was the 3 board members that are the exec committee do round 1. The 2 board members that would be you and Elizabeth will do round 2, and then the remaining 2 board members would be involved in a tour that precedes the full board interviews on the for the final round.
Yep.
So that way, every board member has some involvement in the process before we do the final.
Now, we were, at last week's meeting, we were expecting that was going to be 21st.
Yes, and I think the challenge is Elizabeth she's just acknowledging right now that the timing of it might not work because of the round 2 might take a little longer to get done. So I think that our meeting next week, we'll know that for sure. And then we can adjust our timeline for round 3 or the final round.
Correct.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Let's move down to study session. So this is at the last meeting, we talked about trying to just have a clear understanding of what the city is needing from the shelter in order to develop their next funding agreement. And so in the meantime, it's only been a week, but city staff have been working with Melanie to figure out, you know, something that could help us to make progress. And the city is, you know, eager to get this on the agenda for the city commission to consider. So we're kind of in a space of it may not all be perfect, but we have to think about how we're gonna, you know, start making some progress. So Misty wants to kind of present what the city has gotten so far, and then it'll give us time to discuss it. And then if we feel like we're ready to make a decision on this in the regular agenda topic, we can consider that, or if we're not ready, we can also just defer it to next week. So I am going to stop sharing the agenda, and I will share the slides. If you want to just tell me when to advance.
Okay.
I think that should be it.
So, last Friday, Melanie, Barry and I, spent several hours together trying to draw up what a well-staffed shelter, that can offer all the services we need to live on. So we started with the organizational chart, and I'm going to go forward to 2 of them, Charlie.
Correct. Keep going.
One more. So, this is basically what we came up with. We've got the ED, their reports. Now, this doesn't include the number of staffing, but just the general positions right now. So ED, those 7 reports, and it kind of breaks out. So we'll just walk through each one of those for the next one. So we're looking at the ED, having this team under them. So having an executive assistant, director of human resources, director of finance, volunteer coordinator, community engagement coordinator, a grant manager, and deputy director of operations. And then underneath that, go ahead. So the deputy director of operations is gonna have a pretty healthy load. They'll be responsible for all the operations of pallet and the emergency shelter. So they will oversee the shelter director, the supervisor for here at the village, the facilities director, and the case management supervisor. Okay. So the shelter director, that position, we foresee it being at 8 to 5. And then under that position, having someone designated to HMIS data entry, making sure that we're staying, you know, on task with good data. Assistant shelter directors, we see those as a second shift type position that will kind of do the same thing at less than shelter, but just kind of oversee having a leadership role on that second shift, because a lot of stuff can happen on that second shift. Then under that, also a food service coordinator. We had talked a little bit about hiring a contractor to set things up, but I believe we're in agreement that we're just gonna try to hire a really good food service coordinator and then just let them set up their kitchen and, you know, hope that they have experience, and then having Chuck as a valuable resource would be great. And then 4 kitchen staff reporting to them initially, and then just see how that goes. Okay. Case management supervisor,
One real quick question now, is this document available? Is this?
I will forward it to you guys. I got it late last night.
Good. Okay.
And so this is a-
Let's try to.
I know, we're
Yep.
interesting environment.
And this is a fluid document too, so Melanie's got some recommendations, we didn't get back together, so we're gonna discuss some more things. So case management supervisor overseeing the different case management roles, this one will be over the emergency shelter, so these positions will be at the emergency shelter. A general case manager, we're probably looking at 4 of those individuals, the same with housing case managers. And then adding a benefits specialist, SOAR case manager. In my experience, this is a position that doesn't get funded. So this is gonna be really valuable to us because a lot of times what happens when folks come in and we're trying to develop a sense of sustainability for their housing, they need a sense of a source of income. And this is where people get tripped up because trying to get social security can take years. With this position, somebody who is homeless, who actually has a disability, they can see benefits within a month to 3 months. So this is really amazing. I'm glad.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Because I'm trying to like see, but I also wanted to go and take a step back
Uh-huh.
to how the hiring for food service coordinator process went. Could you kind of give a little bit of context? Well, yeah, I think you talked about it being a conversation about the process by which you were talking to or had conversations. Okay, okay. And can there be context about like what that process looked like, what your ideas or thoughts were and what that shift is and how that has like, taken place? Is there, can you give me a little bit of context about the food service coordinator and how you got to the point? No, not why we need it. I understand we need that
Okay.
position,
Okay.
but what was the goal or what were the strategies or
Okay,
the thoughts you
so
had
here's-
initially and then how you made that shift and
Okay.
say, we're gonna open that
So
up?
here's what I thought. I thought things were on fire and that
Okay,
we needed something like this.
Okay.
So I sought out somebody that I knew could do it like this. They had connections to bring out a food truck and start serving immediately through this individual that had a food truck.
Mhm.
They also had the ability to set up the kitchen fast while also searching for qualified, people to operate the kitchen and just get the ball rolling. Well, then I understand that things weren't on fire like I thought they were. There's food available, so spending that money to hire somebody to come out and do that, like, that was an urgent need, in my opinion. And then Chuck and I had a conversation about that, and he feels, and I feel like we can hire somebody that's qualified to do that without having to hire 2 people to do that, if that makes sense.
right, so it's a little more like trauma informed, we weren't so moving so much in it and aggressive, needed to get this
Yeah, trying
done.
to
We're
keep
now
people in
able
urgent.
to sit with a little bit of kind of
Yes.
process.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to know
Okay,
a little
yeah,
bit too.
yeah. Okay, so then facilities director, so, you know, we currently don't have any of these things. And we see the toll that takes on the shelter. And it takes a toll on staff trying to keep up with cleaning toilets and putting out crisis fires. And so, we're looking at, I believe it was 2 maintenance positions, at least 2 custodians. I believe that number was 6, security between here and LCS. So security, at LCS, in my opinion, would be needed overnight. That's kind of when you know, during the day, with all the staff that we have, there's like 30 people there during the day. Second shift, you know, we have those, assistant director positions that are in that leadership level and can make decisions about security issues. You know, night's a little bit lighter, so that's when I feel like we really need security there. Here, I believe, because we have a supervisor during the day, I think we need a second and third shift security on that. And so those maintenance and custodial services would also serve this, the village as well. Village supervisor, again, another 8 to 5 position, during the day. Also, the building that you see when you come in, that's gonna be where the monitors are. So, the gate's gonna be an automatic gate that we can let people in. And then also there's a key fob where people will have Salto cards where they can get in if they're residents. we might give cards to, maybe Bert Nash or somebody that's, but, we're working on the intercom for that front gate as well, so if people come up, visitors, whatnot, they can direct to the monitors in that first gate and then gain entrance or not. So then there will be 2 case managers here, every day. We have 6 offices here, so offices, 2 for monitors, 2 for case managers, and, 1 for the supervisor. And then for partners, we have, office space as well. Like I said, security, covering 2nd and 3rd shift. Those lead monitor positions will be the, 3rd shift. Second and 3rd shift, one of these on each. Okay. So then this, just kind of outlines the different positions. The budget for these positions before fringe is about 2.2 million. After fringe, almost 2.7 million. Total positions would be 54 within the 2 facilities.
So how many of the positions are here at the village and how many are at the shelter, the current shelter?
So the village is, 1 supervisor. 4.2 monitors, 4.2 lead monitors, 2.8 security. And 2 case managers.
So about 15. That sound right?
There's 4 regular monitor, 4 lead monitors and 4.
And
regular
then
monitors.
probably some part-time positions in there as well.
Yeah.
These will all be considered city employees, so they'll be getting catered.
No, LCS. as well.
LCS.
Yep.
Okay.
So in breaking down the budgets, of additional funding that we need to add, just to kind of cover things, this is kind of where I was at, hoping that we can start using, get some grants in here to cover things. That's why we did add a grant person into the, budget as well. So these are just guest assistance types things. We'll try to figure out local resources that we can use as well. I would really love to see a robust housing program at the shelter. We know that it really works within a nonprofit like a shelter because the case managers that are there, they don't have to bill Medicaid. And that's kind of where we lose case management in this area. Because, case managers have to carry a certain Medicaid caseload and our people really often don't have Medicaid. So that's kind of where we're heavy on that housing case management piece. Go ahead. Just some facility costs, the $10,000 in equipment, that's for kitchen. We're needing a refrigerator in there and a tilt skillet. Looks like we need to talk about the gasoline expenses because I did not think about transporting food here. So that's gonna be.
It'll be that and mileage or 4 mileage reimbursement to.
I mean, it's gonna be your budget, so you won't be reimbursing.
Yeah.
Yourself. Oh, you're talking about it as staff, does it?
Yeah, having
Okay.
a drive back and forth to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Potentially if they have to use their own vehicle, depending on how the logistics work out.
okay. We can, one way or the other.
Yeah.
So then down to general supplies, just whatever's needed. Kitchen supplies, I was just thinking about, to-go containers. Groceries, I put in 100,000. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that and see if that's a a number, like I don't really know how to think about that with, when you think about harvesters and what other options might be available to you, so not trying to put 1 million in groceries, but if we have to, then figure it out.
I've been calculating it at about $1.50 per meal, and that's kind of on the thrifty side, and I know we have had challenges in the past year or so, getting access to that many things through Just Food and Harvesters, just because the donations have been more limited and the
Yeah.
demand's been higher. So that is definitely something we'll have to talk about, because I think for 150 people around, average, for 3 meals a day, that would be around $250,000 just for food.
Okay. Well, and, this will be fluid, but
Yeah.
the commitment from the city is to make sure this is successful. So if we get 6 months down the road and we're like, oh, no, then we will add to it. Repairs and maintenance, I put 20,000 in. We will have maintenance staff now, so hopefully, that will get rid of a lot of the, contracting that we're currently doing. Service fees, I put 5,000 in. I wasn't really sure what all, you may have sent me that, but I don't remember if I got it. But I wasn't sure what all that was covering. Utilities, 95,000. Again, that was just based on last year's. The computer and internet, those 32,000. I wasn't sure about that number. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is for all of our technology, basically. So all the computers, the internet, and any software apps that we have to pay for. So that's all encompassed in that budget.
Okay. Let's break that down. See. Telephone, 8,500. Is that cell phones or just,
Yeah.
that's just a landline?
Yeah, for all the phones and the costs around that.
Okay.
So you anticipated the IT and telephone service needs out here? Is that part of the? Like right now, we're using the hotspot.
Consider that.
Oh, yeah, they're doing that this weekend. They're setting it all up this weekend. But yeah, as far as,
There's definitely
So-
considerations that we have. to
yeah, so
consider.
as far as, cost of like utility and stuff here, this is city, it's covering those things.
Okay.
So I don't think it'd be additional on that.
I think for staff, we'll probably have to have, since we'll have a pretty significant increase in case management, we always try to get them voice numbers or something to where they can use their personal phone, but not be disclosing their phone number.
Okay,
So we probably, it's not a lot, but we have to increase. Last year.
okay. Yeah, so this is just based on, again, last year's, a lot of that last year's stuff. I don't have a breakdown for
I think-
other professionals.
The health insurance, workers' comp, is that just, you already have that?
So I put, yeah, I
Based
just
in
put it-
the other. Okay.
So is that number updated, the salaries line?
Uh-huh.
Cause you said it was like 2.7, if you put it. When we were looking at the other page, when you say.
With the fringes.
budget doesn't have the fringe on it yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do wonder a little bit about the legal, we need to have. Any consultation with attorneys around the,
And accounting too, right?
union,
We're gonna have a finance director that will do the accounting, but that's the, professional services. That's what that was, right? It was legal and accounting.
I think it's the discussion we have to figure out. Is it better for an agency our size to outsource it or to have it? And I don't know if we really gonna.
Outsource what?
Accounting, like maintaining it and keeping it outsourced, part of it, if it's cost effective or not, I don't really know. There's never been a cost analysis done. I would be concerned at the salary for the finance director, that getting someone that would do all of the financial statements and reporting, of the payroll and all of those things, that might not be, enough.
yeah, I think. It's more economical to outsource your accounting services. The health department does the same. And it's. there's a point where I think it becomes best to probably have your own CFO, but we're not quite at that threshold of the health department. We're a bigger agency, bigger budget. And the accounting costs. Yeah, they're at the point where if we were bigger, we probably would need to think about bringing it back in-house.
Can you speak, Barry, can you speak to what that's like for, as an executive director, having that position on staff? I felt like for me, it was nice to have somebody that I could go to whenever I needed things or,
So it's, it's a hybrid, like both internal and external. In regards to, the account, the audits are all, reconciliations are all external, the actual payments are on. Of course, there's a lot, not like doing annual contributions, and then that operation, there's a lot of this coming, primarily private support. So that accounting and the whole system of donor management, that all part of that from the paper. Which venture into the LCS for doing that.
so the services are donated right now? Is that, oh,
No, I think when you say, this is kind of how it works usually, is you have someone internal that is managing that relationship with the outsourced firm. And they have certain tasks that they do, like preparing their financial reports, providing the software maybe that provides that analysis or provides like the general ledger. But internally, you still have finance
somebody on
specialist,
staff.
someone who's really has access to the accounting and works closely with the vendor. So, I mean, you can't outsource the entirety of that function. It's really, just recognizing it's called fractional CFO. So you're really hiring a CFO that is only kind of part-time working for you while they also work for other, firms. And it's pretty common with small organizations that need it. Similar to IT services, it's very common to have a managed service company come in and provide IT support because you don't have the bench in a small organization to have all the expertise that's needed. So
Yeah.
you outsource that and you have someone who's tech savvy who can kind of work in that space, but not be the IT person.
Okay.
Kind of, I mean, that's part of my role at the health department is I coordinate that and then I also do some of the finance and budgeting.
Could you put a number on?
I would say we already have, we should already have costs for our current outsource to the accounting with Kindred, and
Yeah,
I would say maybe we need to consider a different accounting firm, but for a placeholder, I would just stick
Is
with.
that a fair number then? At 19? That one? That 19,000?
I don't know where the accounting,
I thought that's what that was for.
no, the other professional services is something else. It wasn't, yeah, the account, oh,
It's the line that's empty right now, 55060.
yeah, it looks like it got.
Okay,
Well, it's fluid, we just
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
refine this
okay,
next stage.
Just think we can do just some examples.
okay.
Kindred is fine. I mean, I know a lot of our challenges have been just us being able to maintain good communication with that relationship is because we've been so overburdened in getting things done and timely. But I think, the audit, the annual audit, we also use another for that. And that would change, so that could affect the costs as
Okay.
well.
Okay, donations from last year, I put those in, I imagine things will only get better. Same for that, yeah, these are just last year's revenue numbers.
Are you saying current year? Or the 2023 revenue?
These are the grants that, currently receiving, that CDBG, and that money is still available. I think it needs to be encumbered this month. It hasn't been requested yet. So maybe reach out to,
It started in August, it's like, for CDBG.
I think,
This is the COVID,
No,
no separate.
it's separate from the COVID.
yeah. I'll talk to you about that, because I think when I asked him, like, give me the amount, he said something like, yeah, you need to hurry up and request it, like, okay, I didn't even know it existed. The current funding, from our, special alcohol is the 296,000. Douglas County, same, 296. ESG award for this current year, 55,773. The EFSP, that was for food, right?
Yeah, and we were told that we were awarded for it this year, but then I didn't hear anything, and there was the merging of the United Ways, Douglas County and Topeka. And I know that they were kind of running behind on just getting certain things in place. I probably should reach out to her again, because I had a couple of times, I just know that they are also going through a lot too with all their changes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, it's definitely not guaranteed, and I would say it only typically runs about 10,000 a year. There was extra funds, at the end of the pandemic, kind of part of the ARPA stuff that kind of supplemented it for that number.
Okay. And then the other, not sure where, about it.
It's a COVID KDHE grant for backpack for testing.
Okay. So, yeah, so then the total income right there. Next.
So
So,
does the income exceed the, yeah, so I was thinking total expenses are 3 billion,
yes,
income is 2, but
yeah,
creates
so
the
this is
deficit
right
of
now,
about
the
that.
number that we're looking at adding into that,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
So next steps on this, after we come to an agreement on this dollar amount, I will develop a funding agreement, and then it'll have to go through all of our departments, legal, all that stuff, so that could take a little bit. Really would love to get it in front of the commission by the 19th. So, if possible, if we could finalize this, by Tuesday of next week. That if you guys could come to an agreement on the dollar amount before Tuesday, I think I could get this done on Tuesday, and I would have to get it to them once through the channels and, to the commission on Thursday. But I would have to let them know that it's coming on Tuesday, I believe. And then, Brandon said this would need to be done. Board of Directors needs to designate you to sign that. I don't know if that's something, I've never heard that, but that's what he said that needs to be done.
So we don't have to wait for another board meeting to. do the
Oh,
approval,
okay,
so then I
okay.
have that authority.
Basically, if we identify the amount and authorization to the intermediate,
Okay,
then we're kind of done on our end.
cool, okay. Next. Putting a pause right now on pallet, 45. There is a lot of, planning that we're gonna have to do to get it set up, so putting it into this just didn't feel like the right thing to do right now. Figuring out the steps, after I get this done, I will then come back with, here's what we need to do to get those pallets up. We've got, an idea of what it's gonna cost to make sure that we get a fence and the electric and all that, and so that we're at pallet standards. We did find out when they were here, setting up here, that they will come back and install those for us. That's part of our contract with them, so that's good.
You have a sense of the timeline?
Of how long this would take?
Like is the pause for 4 months?
I would
6
say
months?
4 months, yeah. So then, once we, get an idea of where this is going and cost and all that, then we'll, bring it back up, and then that'll be an addendum to this current contract and more funding for those, and the funding, the positions that we looked at would look a lot like this. Having a monitor on site just behind LCS, having security just for that, because like we talked about, that is probably gonna be for that population that are gonna be really resistant. So, we want to make sure that, you know, it's very well taken care of. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, so again, since I really could not see most of the numbers that are associated with this, with the taglines with it. Are we going to be asked, in order to meet these deadlines, we have to approve this budget proposal from LCS by Tuesday, is that correct?
We have to agree on a number for me to put it into the funding agreement. Yes.
So the current, what you presented tonight, or this morning. Basically, the gap between the expense and the total and the revenues. Would be that dollar amount? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what we could do is. Authorize intermediate to. Continue working with the city of Lawrence to finalize this and give. Kind of a maximum dollar amount. And so it could be anything at that level or below. And that could be a motion we make and pass today. And that kind of clears the way for Melanie to continue working with Misty and city staff to. Kind of finalize what does this look like. I think some of the details are helpful to kind of understand the scope of the expansion. But obviously those still have to be figured out and. But just get,
You're saying that is, if we approve something today, it would not preclude the likelihood of having to come back with a supplemental.
not in very, I mean, it'd be quite some time. It sounds like the next time we would have another agreement would be the L 45.
Unless there was an urgent need or something like that.
Right.
So I appreciate like all the work that you all did on this. I'm not comfortable yet, and I'm currently the treasurer and still getting to know that role. And so I would want to spend a little, and I'm meeting with Melanie today. So I would like to have a little bit more time to look at the numbers and see if there's any gaps that maybe we notice in the next few days. I mean, I'm willing to put in some time over the weekend, and if we need to do it by email, have it done by Tuesday, I think that makes sense. Just kind of know where we're coming from. But also I think I would want the agreement to include like the commitment from the city to pay for utilities here, like we were saying, just so we know what we're responsible for and what the city.
Yeah, that would be outlined in the funding agreement, and you guys would get that before it goes to the commission.
Okay,
And if there
Yeah.
was an issue, it wouldn't go to the commission.
and that makes sense to me, and I just wanted to make sure that was the plan, is that we don't just say, Melanie, here's a number, you can approve it, like we actually read through the agreement so that because we're responsible for that as well, so I would want to take on some more of that responsibility.
So you
Yeah,
want,
so that's a good point.
you wanted to
Yes.
see the addendum before. it
Yeah,
goes.
it's not gonna be an addendum, it's gonna be a brand new.
Yeah, Brandon, you want to see the contract before it
Yes.
goes to the city commission.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Or before voting to.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the possibility of that?
I mean, I think it has to happen.
The Thursday meeting that we have scheduled right now is in the evening. Not the morning. I'm just wondering if that would help, or do we need to find a time on Tuesday? I mean, part of this is on the city staff to finalize the agreement, so.
Do we need, excuse me for not knowing the mechanic of how to work within this board, but can we achieve approval prior to the next Thursday's meeting? Is there a mechanism where, once we've had a chance as board members to look at this, we are told that by Tuesday at noon, we need to indicate our approval of something like this, or is that not something that we can achieve within the framework of the
Could we potentially,
process?
would you agree on an electronic approval system where I can send it out to like Adobe Sign and each board member could sign if they approve it? And I think if we approve that, or if you approve that in this meeting, that was going to be this one-time process until we have other processes in place, It seems like that could be an option.
Because I want to see this thing move and accelerate and getting into the holiday timeframe and the city commission meetings are gonna be jumbled and yeah, we need to.
I mean, I think we could certainly craft that sort of motion, but I also think to Rebecca's concern, do you want space for deliberation or discussion about the agreement, or would you be satisfied with that we essentially are gonna push out electronic vote once we see the draft agreement?
So, I mean, speculating obviously, because, you know, if there is if we want corrections, and now that COMA is applying, applies here. I think we need to have a way, maybe we could have sort of a two-phase, that we send out the draft, we individually respond to you or whoever with our specific requests. And then I guess you could email all of that out to everyone.
So,
And then we would vote. I'm trying. Careful.
I think hardly December. I don't know.
one way we could, so this goes back to where it's a little more nimble when you just authorize someone to do work on behalf of the whole board. So you could say, authorize the president and the interim ED to finalize the agreement. And then it's up to us to get that done by Thursday. That gives the city time to put it on their agenda. Maybe another approach, so.
I mean, I'm comfortable
Or
with
you
that.
could, or if you're interested, you could be the person that works with Melanie to finalize what's presented to the city commission. That would be another way to do it. If you have the interest or time to do that back and forth, I don't know how much time that'll take, and if you don't feel comfortable, then I think you have authority to say, we're not ready. And,
Mhm.
At the meeting on Thursday evening that we have, if you give us that update, so.
I'm comfortable being the designee, but just time-wise, I think Misty needs everything by the 12th, and our next meeting is the 14th.
Right. I'm just trying to get to the point where we don't have to have another meeting.
Right.
And I'm pretty satisfied with, so for me, the overall process,
I think I'm skipping ahead a week. I think I need it the 19th, right?
you need it by next,
At Tuesday, so you would need it the week before so that you go through legal and it.
Do you need a full week or?
I mean, I would need it like complete, like the agreement by.
so as I understand it, this is to put on the commission agenda on the 19th of December. They published that agenda on the 14th.
Yeah, okay.
So that's next Thursday. So we need between now and next Thursday to be comfortable with what's on the city commission agenda for their consideration on the 19th. So I'll step back a moment and say, for me, I'm comfortable with kind of the broad swaths of where we're going. And what I heard is that the city is committed to this being successful. I trust that is sincere, and that if we find there's some deficiency, that we can address that. There's also gonna be an addendum that we expect, 4 or 5 months from now, which could also create an opportunity for
Things were missed.
making some corrections. So in that sense, I'm pretty happy with just saying yes now. But if we want to have some space to see the details, because in the past we haven't had that, so maybe that's why you're expressing that concern. I think that's legitimate. I would be comfortable if you took that space with Melanie to get us to the finish line by next week. I think the key is this is fluid, and we gotta keep showing that we're making progress, and if we do that, I feel like we're being as responsive as we can to the community needs. So,
I'm comfortable.
okay. How does this feel about Rebecca working with Melanie to get this finalized by Thursday? Okay, well, we don't have to vote on it just yet. Let's go back to the agenda, make sure we're still in the study session, so. Any other thoughts on this study session topic?
Now, as far as where the cities, I should. I mean, I guess I just have this generalized sense in my mind, we're talking about $2 million. But maybe the $2 million was for the department.
It included the department and, homelessness.
So this is supposed to be within that.
No,
Okay. That's-
So there's two things that I'm thinking of. When, earlier we were talking about like the board potentially voting on like a maximum. Should it also be a minimum to make sure that we can maintain certain operations?
Yeah, I don't know, we need to. That sounds like we're possibly just leaving that, to be determined by the two of you. I do feel like we know the minimum. Question is on some of those, blanks. That needs to be added in probably. And then if there's any other obvious tweaks. But I just like to make sure we have a process that can get us there and, I was throwing that out as a suggestion, like you could establish kind of a cap and then authorization for you to work within the cap. I'm satisfied not even having a cap, just saying, let's authorize the two of you to get this finished and then the city can move forward based that they are trying.
So are we anticipating this will be reimbursement, or will there be like fixed payments happening? Or is there some flexibility?
there's flexibility.
Yeah.
We can,
They typically set up scheduled payments
Okay.
Twice a year. My other concern or question, the things that I'm thinking about is the actual implementation of this once there is an agreement in place. Because this is a significant change in our operations and we are just kind of getting going for you guys as a board. And we talked about policy development and procedures. And this is going to take a lot of work. It's a significant change in our operations. And I want to make sure that we are set up to be successful implementing those things. And the future ED is set up to be successful and the staff have very clear directive on what their responsibilities are and going into that. So it's not easy, like it doesn't happen overnight. And currently a lot of our policies do not fit this model exactly that we're moving towards. So that would also be one of my concerns or things that I'm considering on what do we do to make sure that we are setting everyone up for success in this.
I imagine that might look like us having to meet more frequently or a bit longer, like we just decided to start meeting weekly. Maybe we need to continue that as we make this transition to expanding services so we can get through the workload, is what I'm hearing you say, is that?
Yeah, I really feel like we probably do just need to make a plan on meeting more frequently so that we can develop these programs and make sure that everybody is an approval and on board and on the same understanding of what we're doing.
I think Barry and I are we're here to help to. review.
Yeah,
I think that's reasonable, and we recognize it at the last meeting, that we have a lot to get done, so.
So I was watching the last meeting online, and I was able to kind of familiarize myself with the agenda and topics of discussion, and also centering what Melanie says is working in position as long as you have as an interim. So I'm taking that into consideration when I'm thinking about what strategies and policies that you were creating. So in the last meeting, I think you're talking about creating policies and working on updates some of those. Can you give me an example of what the strategies and the implementation of this plan? You said it don't match, don't align, or I think I heard you say they don't align with the policies you work on currently. Can you give me an example of that, like what that specific, how these policies are not matching with the current plan that we're looking at today?
well, typically we've been functioning as low barrier shelter and just this space alone is not going to be low barrier. It's actually going to be what I would call a high barrier. And criminal background checks will be conducted, they'll be more selective. So just things like that, how we work as a low barrier shelter is completely different than how this will operate. And we have discussions about, the bigger change, again, will happen with the, Cal 45, of having low barrier options, the high barrier option up here and then an option in the middle. for people that are working on, you know, employment or building professional development, eviction treatment, you know, those things that are actively working, on a whole path to housing. So with all those options being, in addition to what we've done in the past, if the policies we have just does not fit those operations.
Well, and then but hiring for this will be brand new position, so folks that would not be used to those policies.
Right.
And on that topic, I wanted to ask the board, you, whoever makes that decision, because of the sensitivity that the neighborhood has to this project and, so that is a Pinckney resident. I was wondering if, we could include them in the, like, the supervisory hiring for this, for the village, like that. What, being on the panel that makes a decision.
I'm open to community members and people with lived experience and everyone being involved. I think that the board people, that we allow to have a voice or at least a representative from those different communities, I think that makes us, more successful.
I think that'll be really helpful, in making sure we have, you know, we've got a promise to be good neighbors and, to keep them involved however they want to be involved, so I think that would be really good for our relationship.
Right, any other discussion around this topic for the study session?
Did a follow-up question for Melanie, when you talk about like this, the village is a high barrier shelter, is LCS? The regular LCS still lower barrier, or are we doing criminal background checks for? Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, that would be, we'd be implementing all new policy for this.
For this, the village.
I mean, what I would typically do, which I actually like writing policy. I would create umbrella policies that kind of set the standards for all of our programs and kind of creates the umbrella. And then write specific procedures for each of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, because the policies aren't levies and they're not transferable for the shelter internally and then for the college. They're
Or
gonna have
even-
to look at-
Or even
Well,
45, that would be.
procedures will-
nice.
So, yeah, there's more construction of that work to be done. This board, sit down with that.
And I've been working on them.
I think the other piece that was discussed in the last meeting was just the backlog of board review and approval of policies. It just hasn't occurred. And so we were struggling even to get a sense of, is this 50 policies, 20 policies? And Melly's assembled a folder for us to be able to see the various policies the best you can pull together. And the exec committee is gonna kind of begin that process of triaging which needs to be reviewed first and how do we start to get this work done? So that was kind of how the board finally ended that discussion last week.
So I've been prioritizing the policies that are program or operations specific that I need to develop procedures for. Because if I write the procedures first, I would be going backwards. So that's what I was looking at, and that's what I put in the folder too, are the policies that I started drafting. Just drafts, but the thoughts I have behind it, so that the board members could look.
Okay. Misty, I believe you.
It's okay, I can.
Okay, well, is there any other discussion on the study session topic? Did you have one?
Just do we want to talk about the Salto that we're in?
Sure, I think that's
Okay.
a big part of our expansion.
I have, worked with LCS staff to, get the entry card system, changed over from their program to a Salto system. We're adding more doors, we'll be able to block off the dormitories separately, so it'll be a total, key part, card system. I need to get back with somebody out there, to make sure I do have the right boards. I do have the blueprints to LCS, so I'm gonna get those done and hopefully get that released very soon.
So
Thanks, Mitch.
that will be.
All right.
Sorry.
The camera didn't actually zoom in on you. You must be,
A good thing.
you're immune to its charms.
For safety reasons, to make sure that folks are separated and safe. And then maybe ID also. There's a way to put,
I would like to get a retransfer machine that creates basically a film that's a sticker, so we could take people's pictures and put their names and put it on the actual card. That way we know that they are using their card and not someone else's for one. But also it could have other benefits because a lot of our people don't have any form of ID. And I know it wouldn't be like a legal state ID, but, at least for some of our, with partnering agencies and kind of that network we have, it might be beneficial for people to at least have something like that.
That's a great idea. I would, suggest maybe reaching out to emergency management. They have an ID, card printer that's used for badges for a lot of us that are involved in emergency response, and they might be willing to help out with that, at least as an immediate option for you. Then they have barcodes, and it's just, there's a whole system where they manage knowing which personnel are authorized to be in a facility or at an incident, so.
It would really help us too with, understanding our costs of our services, because one of the things that we've had a difficulty tracking is like how many meals we're serving, and if they had something like that, that they could scan when they got a meal, that would be really helpful for our reporting.
I like that idea. You talk about barriers and, oftentimes when people are in transition and, transients, sometimes the best opportunity for them to collect the information ID would be to be incarcerated. So they can utilize that as some kind of mechanism to say, improve who they are as a living body. But if we're offering an opportunity for people who do not have to go get their ID and check things done in an incarceration facility, in this space, that's one barrier that we could help to eliminate for people to try to gain some kind of access to identification and other things.
And that barrier is actually increased because they stopped getting patients after they have been incarcerated. So we can't even get those in.
It sounds like a good thing to try to replicate and do something like that, similar to that. All right, anything else on the study session topic? Then let's go down to the regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is consider approval of funding requests to the city of Lawrence. Sounds like we're not ready to call it exactly a funding request, but I think we have a process. Does anyone want to take a stab at a motion, or want me to take a stab at a motion? I'm happy to do it, so.
Please.
Well, I move that we authorize Rebecca, the treasurer and the interim ED to work with the city of Lawrence to finalize the funding agreement. With the goal of finalizing it by next Thursday, so the city commission can consider it at their December 19th meeting.
so what, when, like Tuesday?
Okay, let me change this again. I move that the board authorizes the treasurer and the interim ED to work with the city of Lawrence to finalize the funding agreement for 2024 by Tuesday, December 12th. Proposed funding agreement by Tuesday, December 12th.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion about the motion?
Now, again, you had said that we would receive a copy of those documents, so the interim between now and Tuesday, if we had questions that were related to those specific documents, then that's where we would relay that concern.
So here's where it gets difficult. We don't want to have an interactive discussion, and that starts to sound like an interactive discussion. Because that would be a coma. We'd have to have a public meeting to do
You know,
that.
it's just two of us that would, if I would be communicating, if I would send an email to Rebecca.
I'm happy to say, let's add you to the group that's authorized to finalize this. That's, I'm pretty content that these two could figure that out. But if you were interested in having a little more involvement, then I think we just expand that, and we still haven't had a.
Are you talking about the funding agreement in whole?
Yeah, Well, I mean, I'm just saying if there's something that I'm, when I'm sitting and looking at the 5 pages, and it's like, wait a minute. Is this real or is this representative? If I can, provide that question to Rebecca, is that acceptable?
I will amend my motion. Because I really think this is a simple path. We just need to be comfortable with the group of us that can do it without having to add more complexity by having another meeting. I move that Rebecca and Melanie and Chuck are authorized to work with the city of Lawrence to finalize the proposed funding group for 2024 by next Tuesday, December 12th.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I guess we probably should have rescinded our previous
We
motion.
can withdraw the previous one, yeah.
Okay, any discussion on that? So that you can have all the discussion you want, only 2 of you.
You can also ask the city.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to the update next Thursday. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, then let's take a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. And motion passes unanimously. Next on our regular agenda is considering the advisory committee timeline. Elizabeth, do you want to
Yeah.
share your thoughts?
So, I sent, everyone an email of kind of some suggested ideas for, what a questionnaire would look like to start to recruit that advisory board. And, knowing that everything that we have on our plate right now, I was looking at a timeline to get this, sent out, at the moment everyone kind of agrees with this idea, and solicit advisory board members until January 5th. So that would give us enough time to review those folks who volunteered and then vote on it in the January board meeting. If anyone has any thoughts or kind of alterations to that timeline, I would like to go ahead and have Melanie and her team put that out on social media and the email newsletters that go out for LCS, and then we'll kind of share it broadly. But if there are no objections to that, or if people liked the questions that I proposed, then that would be great. Then we can continue forward.
So I don't know if everyone has, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm not sure if everyone's seen that list of questions that are in the draft survey.
I can read them off if that is helpful.
That'd be great. I was gonna
Okay.
just pull it up, I can share it.
First, in the form, I let everyone know that advisory committee members are not limited, include but not limited to the following: city and county employees, representatives of social service agencies and other nonprofit entities, current and former guests to the shelter, individuals with lived experience. Took that language directly from our bylaws. So my first question is, what motivates you to get involved in addressing homelessness and supporting the Lawrence Community Shelter? Can you please share your background and relevant personal or professional experience in addressing homelessness or working with vulnerable populations? How would you approach advocating for the needs of the homeless population in Lawrence and within the broader community? What steps would you like to see to promote inclusivity within the advisory board and the shelter's programs and services? And then what ideas do you have for improving or expanding services at Lawrence Community Shelter? And how would you evaluate the success?
The one thing I noticed in the introduction, the bylaws also include, I think it says employees of the corporation, but corporation is referring to the shelter itself.
Okay.
So I think maybe just adding in the employees of city,
Shelter employees.
county, and the shelter.
Okay.
Any other feedback or suggestions on how to do this? So this is essentially gonna be pushed out publicly, asking people to either, I'm assuming they're gonna self-nominations is kind of a strategy, but if people won't submit this on behalf of others, or will they? Or
I-
could they?
Don't think that we should have people, because this is going to have a time commitment, I don't think we should allow people to self-nominate. Because we would want to know that individual's person's motives for participation. So I would advise against self-nominating, of course.
What I
Obviously,
mean by self-nominating is, like, would I fill this out for myself, or would I fill it out? Cause I
you would
think,
fill it out for yourself.
okay,
I don't think we
That's a
should have
self-nomination.
others fill it out on other people's behalf unless there is a accessibility issue with the form.
yeah. got it. Maybe we could add that into the description just to make it clear, like, you don't do this for another person unless, I mean, yeah, they essentially need their consent. I think, like, that's all I'm looking for is, I'm gonna volunteer a bunch of folks, you know? And I guess we wanna know for sure these are people that have said, yes, they wanna do it.
So I want to be careful with the phrasing. I know like semantics, we probably spend too much time on that, but just the homeless population phrasing to me,
I
is
should
sort
say
of
folks
like-
experiencing homelessness, sorry.
Okay, that would sound, yeah, I appreciate that, just because so many people, you're not a homeless person, you're somebody, and you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
this, of course,
Yep.
like, but I wanna say it since it's a public meeting, like,
Person first.
well, person first, because like, there are people who have houses right now who will not in 2 months because of the eviction crisis happening, I mean, I just, like, it's so painful to hear people talk about, like, the othering, I guess, is what I'm talking about, and it could happen to any of us, and so that's why I think the way we talk about it is so important, and I appreciate, I know, Elizabeth, you're very, understanding of all this.
Elizabeth, are you trying to get the launch of this by the 5th, or are you trying to get this launched like tomorrow?
Oh, I was trying to get it launched tomorrow and then collect applications until the 5th. So that gives us enough time to review the candidates, to then make a decision on those candidates.
On January 25th meeting?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Does everybody understand that? Basically, she's asking us to have, open up the application process. And then that would be then reviewed by, who would do the review, I guess, would be the next question.
So I can share, I can, it's all in the drive, so I can share the candidates with the whole board, and if we, if it's appropriate, what I can do is create that spreadsheet of responses, and the board can rank the candidates, and then we can propose that slate based off the rankings. How do we like that idea?
I think except for the board seeing each other's rankings, right? That starts to get to interactive communication, I think.
Oh,
But if
can
we're
I,
able to. Well, I mean, technically, it doesn't sound like communication, but if I'm able to see how
Other
others
people's-
are ranking, that starts to get to, in my mind, feels like we're interacting somehow.
So I have a couple of questions, and that it kind of streamlines into what was just said about taking a paternalistic approach to this, or non-trauma informed approach as far as language and accessibility of such, because you're right, it's a temporary, or we want it to be a temporary position, but we want to get away from what would you do and how would you advocate, because you're speaking in the space of like paternalism as though you're taking care of the needs of the person without assessing those needs of the individual beforehand. So maybe a more aspirational question could look like, let's see, I wrote it down here. What do you want to see for your city for folks experiencing homelessness? instead of what would you do? Because it speaks to centering those voices of individuals rather than your own direction and leadership to a situation that an experience that doesn't always identify with your personal experience. So taking the lead and making sure that there's a healing centered approach to these questions and not a polarizing one would be something I would lean more towards, and I appreciate the work that you do with questions that those kind of those inquiries are sometimes and can get to be a little cumbersome. However, if you take the approach of being healing centered and not being a person taking care, but a person helping to assist with the care and the needs of the individual, you'll go good with the questions that come from that space.
So are
So
you,
I know that you want to publish this tomorrow, Elizabeth, but and this is my fault too for not having access to some of these files where I could have looked at this and said what may have been an expression of what I'm feeling right now, but however, because of coma, maybe those conversations couldn't have happened.
Right.
But I feel like, you know, now is a place where we're all talking about it, and maybe there could be deeper conversations, we can go a little bit broader into what these questions could potentially strike into a person as they're looking to help or assist, and how sometimes that could not be helpful, because the adverse reactions or the intentions or the unintended consequences of these questions could cause a person to feel more moved to do the work for others in taking care, rather than leading into a leadership position and pushing yourself to want to assist in the caregiving. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
absolutely, and is your, so is the main concern for this specific, is it mostly this question, how would you approach advocating for the needs? Is that your, is that, because, yeah,
Also, what steps would you like to see to promote? Because that is also an indicator of coming with your own bias or your own kind of steps and approaches, rather than you're not working from inside, you're working from outside. So I don't want to take the approach of I'm coming in with my already what I feel instead of working collectively with the group. So I just feel those questions allude to an already a sense of ownership into a space when we're trying to work collectively in a space.
so, I don't know if it's a good use of our time to workshop this, and maybe,
I have an idea.
yeah,
What I'd like to propose is have just kind of similar, like, let's just authorize, like Elizabeth, you were here last week, so you kind of stepped up and offered to lead this effort, but now that Christina's here, I'd be happy to see the two of you really shepherd this entire process and give you more flexibility, that the goal is that by the January 25th meeting, you provide a proposed advisory committee to the board for us for consideration. And that means you have flexibility on how you're gonna recruit this group, what the timing is. I'm confident that the two of you working together would provide a pretty good advisory committee for us to consider on the 25th. And so that's giving you more flexibility. Our goal is just to get this committee in place, and that's a little over a month to get that done. Chuck, you had something else to say?
Well, I just wanna, and maybe I didn't hear this part earlier in the conversation, but our bylaws say, and I agree with you, I think that's the word. Bylaws say that before this task, determining the size and duration. So have we done that?
We talked about the size being commensurate with the board, so if we have a 7-member board, then we have a 7-member advisory committee. Honestly, I'd rather just stay flexible and let Elizabeth and Christina bring us a proposal that meets the requirements of the bylaws. So that we could say, you know, we trust you to get this finished, bring us something, and that timeline feels reasonable, I think, but if it doesn't work, then you think you need more time, then just give us that, but just giving you guys that authority feels like it's gonna help us get there.
I guess the reason I'm wondering about it is if we're asking individuals
Participate, are we providing them with a sense of how many people they're interacting with, what's the expectation of their duration of the role?
I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, what are they getting involved in?
That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, well, do you wanna queue this up for more discussion at our next meeting on the 14th? And then in the interim, the two of you can work together, Christina, I'm talking to Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also, I mean, absolutely kudos to you, Elizabeth, for putting this together, in such short notice and taking the steps that you have in leadership, and my apologies, I wasn't here last meeting, like I said, so it seems like I missed quite a bit of information and actions going forward. However, I also don't have access to some of the documents, and I'm working on that too, so that's also my bad. But we can definitely connect and collaborate on what, the questions could look like, also, anytime I get involved in something, I need to know the mission and vision of the purpose. So that would be a great thing to also kind of implement and let people know what they're buying into, what that buy-in looks like. So maybe that could be something we suss out in a meeting, a strong mission and vision statement, or utilizing the Lawrence Community Shelters. But anyway, that may answer that question of like, why am I here and the purpose? But absolutely, the questions I think are important to really kind of make an introspective look into, because it also helps us to establish the vision and mission of the individuals and to work collectively in an organic way. And I have a little bit of history of that, work with the health department and some of the things we did with the Health Equity Action Board, and other spaces, and the community health plan. So I have a little experience with this, and I would love to add to this, conversation with you, Elizabeth, at some point.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. And I
Go
sent
ahead.
you the direct link of it, so we can bypass the issue that, the tech issue that we're having. And then we can workshop that and really, get to that, you know, I'm so grateful for your perspective because I want that, those questions to not be, discouraging or, discounting anyone. So thank you for that perspective, and I appreciate your help, Christina, on that.
Okay, so thanks, Elizabeth and Christina. If we want, maybe a simple motion would just be to authorize the two of you to work together on this project. That seems fair enough.
That seems fair, and I know that there was a consideration to come to a timeline to January 5th to slip that time, we're now kind of feel.
I think we can just let you guys figure that out. At the next meeting next week, if you're able to both be there, we could maybe hear from you, like, where are you at? And does the January 25th timeframe, that's kind of when you bring the proposal back. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So for now, I move that we authorize Christina and Elizabeth to lead the effort to create a proposal around an advisory committee for the board.
I'll second
For a
that.
second. All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion about the motion? And then all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I think that was the last item on our agenda for today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Can we see one of the